Okay, we're going to go ahead and start without Aura so we can get started and hopefully she can sort out her audio. So is there a motion to call this meeting to order? Is there Brydon? Is there a second? Thank you, Emily. All those in favor? Great. Then we are calling this meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. on December 8th, 2022. This is a Finance Committee meeting. Just for a little bit of context setting. So payroll staff is diligently working on payroll issues. And so we made the decision to have them continue that work and for us to gather to do some collection of questions. I know several of you asked for this opportunity to just collect questions. That is the sole purpose of tonight's meeting. We're not going to be having conversation in a back and forth way. We're not going to be trying to answer any of the questions that are raised tonight. We are simply gathering a list of questions of things that we are still curious about. And I will be working to get answers on all of those things as quickly as possible. And the questions should be related solely to payroll or finance. They should not be personnel or other items. Does anybody have questions about any of that? Feeling clear? Okay, beautiful. So I will, and Aura is helping. And Aura, can you hear now? Okay, great. Aura is going to help with some note taking on this. So I would like to open the floor to anybody that has questions now. Sarah Brydon?
Sure. Yeah, I can
go ahead and start. Yep.
Super. Okay. I am hoping to get more information about what the specific timeline is for the Munis re-implementation, what the specific steps Tyler Technology is taking, if there's, for example, like a list of configuration items that they could provide, so we have a sense of what they're doing. I'm sure they're doing a lot of really important things, but like just getting a sense of those things would be helpful. Do you want me to keep going, or I don't know if we're like taking turns or?
Yeah, I feel like ask a few questions and then we can move on. Yeah,
I'll finish out the category.
Perfect.
So also related to that piece of it, I'm interested in getting more information about what steps are in place to make sure that pay errors aren't repeated from pay period to pay period while we're waiting for the Munis re-implementation to run its course and be done. I'll take a pause and let others go, and then you can come back to me later.
Thanks, Sarah. We'll go to Emily next, and then Yusuf.
One of my questions is about the segregation of duties. I know that regarding not just throughout our financial department and HR, I know that when we had our joint finance committee meeting in September, the auditor for the city, who did the audit with us, of course, said she was very satisfied with our plan. I am wanting to know exactly where we are in the implementation of that plan. And specifically whether for all of our staff, including Terry, for instance, if we have fully implemented the segregation of duties, which often can be accomplished via the technology. So just limiting what each staff person has access to, and to ensure that there are adequate controls.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just add one more thing for now. Mm-hmm. I'm very interested in how Munis was set up incorrectly, how we did not follow the recommendations, or how when Munis was set up for us, the recommendations from Munis were not followed. I think that's a very important piece of information for us to understand, because of course, one of the core reasons why we're here is because the staff running payroll were doing things behind the scenes because they had to work around Munis, because Munis did not work for us. So how was it that we set up Munis inaccurately to begin with? it's another question how we let it run, how we didn't have the controls in place to understand that. Understanding why from the first in the first place that Munis was set up incorrectly.
Thank you, Emily. Yusuf? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you for letting me. Thank you so much. So one of my questions is how big this issue is, how we so far see emails, and how I'm, to be honest, worried and would like to know how big the issue is. My second question is this something that we have the capacity to resolve, or do we in a timely manner, or do we need to go out and ask support from city and state? My last question is who is talking to people, to staff? Are we staff need to hear from us? So who is responsible? Who is taking that responsibility to have them on board? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yusuf. Micky.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I have 3 questions here. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I try to understand all those account documentation and check balance the way we've been doing from the account payable. So just to know how those different steps we're doing. So how we have done our documentations, and how we've been doing those checks balance to make sure that, we have a documentation for each all expenses and all expenditures, and the documentation who's really taking care of that documentation on the account payables, and who's doing the check balance as well. And my second question, I keep coming back again. How many people have been impacted in our district, in our schools, around the ATEX, subs, and teachers? Right. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. I have my hand up. I'm going to call on myself, seeing no one else. I would like to understand the overpayments that I know that there's been a number of $57,000 that has been said, and I would like to understand if that is accurate, and if not, what is the number, as well as if that money has been recouped. What other questions? Oh, yeah, Ms. Brydon, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Sort of related to that and related to one of the questions that I asked on Tuesday, I'm curious to know, of the impacted employees, how many of them are an overpayment situation, how many are an underpayment situation, and how many of them are an accurate payment situation, where the premise of the question ends up being a matter of confusion, or just needing to be assured that their pay was accurate. In terms of the overpayments and the underpayments, I would like more information about when the district became aware or started to become aware of some of these situations, and specifically if there were overpayments that happened weeks and weeks ago. I'd like to have some more information about why that wasn't explained with more specificity to the Finance Committee and to the full board.
Thank you, Sarah. What else? Yeah, Ben. Oh, sorry. Let's do Nylet first, and then Ben.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Ben. I'm just gathering more questions. They're my thoughts on more questions, but I want to know when the Tyler technician was put on duty or service. Like when was that resource utilized? Because I think it's really important, being that it's an access that they have that they could have, or we could have utilized at any time. I also want to know what the technical structure of Portland Public Schools is, being that Gavin is gone, and I don't know if there's anybody that replaced him. And I also want to know if they're the part of the administration that deals with Munis, if they're like the technical aspect of Munis for the city, because if there's somebody there and they had the training to do all of the technical stuff for Munis, I want to know, like, I honestly just like, I would like to know at least a specific like position of like this was a technical issue, or this was a, you know, like a checks and balance, which I know we've had that conversation, but I think I would feel good just understanding the technical aspect or like the structure for Portland Public Schools. And then what is the accountability around the misinformation given to people that aren't getting their payments? Because I think at the last board meeting, one of the people, I think he was like a ed tech or a coach at Lyman Moore, maybe, I'm not sure, but he specifically talked about people giving him misinformation and also telling him that he's going to get paid at a certain time, but it not actually happening. So I think if like that is really hurting, you know, the work that is continuous, because if people are still telling people that, oh, you're going to get paid, but they're not getting paid, or, oh, it's going to be fixed, but it's not. I really want to understand, like, what's the accountability around just like, if it's not fixed and people aren't getting the right payments, just not telling them at all that that's the case. Because I think just like that just creates further instability when people then like, because he specifically talked about the fact where he said he wasn't going to leave if they didn't pay him. And then, he said he wasn't going to go home until he got paid. And then somebody told him to just go home and that it might show up on his paycheck. So I just really want to know like what the communication is on the ground, maybe not specifically from the superintendent, but directly, how are people communicating the higher level things directly to the people that are being impacted. And then I also want to know about how do we take accountability as a board and as an administration, not in a way where we're pointing fingers or doing all of that, but just like a collaborative sense of just understanding obviously how bad it is and how, or not how bad it is, but how bad things are and how sorry we are that like people are having to go through this. And I just I want to know if we have capacity to put out a a joint statement, I guess, just essentially like about the fact that this is probably the worst it can get for folks, and that we take full responsibility, because I just think it will help our community understand that we're not obviously just standing by, like we understand how bad it is and we're trying our best to fix it. And I also think, maybe just, I don't even know what the word is, but like also just straightening some things out. I don't even know if that's the term, but like there's a lot of misinformation around like what we can do as a board and how we can help this situation. Because I think people think that we could just like fire people or just like go in there. And I think it would be wise for us to try to create a statement that reflects some of the things that we're doing and reflects our responsibility as a board, as well as like the other things we're doing, like the fact that we're already on a search. So people asking for us to fire Javier is insane. Like we're on a search. Like, what do you want us to do? And I know we're not supposed to be having back and forth conversation, but I think it's just, if we can have that, it might just ease the pressure a little bit, I guess. That's kind of where I was going with that. And then the other thing I wanted to know is what is going to be done, or like, how do we help people with their taxes? Because a lot of the money that they're getting is uncharacterized. So like a lot of people emailed about money just being kind of direct deposited into their bank without being specified for like tax reasons. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do around that. Like, how are we going to help people specify when it comes to tax season? But yeah.
Thank you, Nyla. We'll go to Ben and then Emily.
Thanks. I've noticed my internet's a little bit shaky tonight, so if I freeze, I'll come back, but I'll try to get through this. So I want to play right off of what Nyla just finished with, because that was number one for me, and that's taxes. Specifically, I want to know, is this the same people that are doing payroll in this finance department that are responsible for any churning out of the tax information later? Because if so, do we need to bring in some people for tax time, to layer in, so that's not completely screwed up as well? Because it's the same personnel. So like, do we need added people around tax time? Because I don't understand how the tax part of this works from within the finance department. I did flag I flagged a lot of things, but one particular comment from the other night was someone raised the issue of retirement contributions. I hadn't heard that or seen that in email, so that was new to me. Maybe it's something they misunderstood because maybe it's one-off, but maybe not. So I think that's worth kicking the tires on to make sure we know that one way or the other. Then kind of playing off what Sarah B started with, I feel compelled to know more of the exact details about how a couple processes work. Like, I don't understand how stipends are supposed to work. I don't know what failed, and I don't know why they can't fix it immediately, and why do we have repeated problems with stipends. So I feel like I need to have a nuts and bolts explanation of, original process problem, why it can't be fixed. And I have that written down for stipends, hourly employees with reporting hours, and onboarding new employees, which seems to be an issue around a few people not getting paid at all. So I want a nuts and bolts explanation of a couple of these processes, because I can't square the fact that they're not fixable right away. And that was one of the answers I gleaned from Javier the other night, that, they can triage and make people whole right now to the great extent, but they can't actually fix the underlying issues. And that I just can't make sense of that right now. So I'm looking for a fuller explanation. And then my last one, several of you have raised the issue of how many people. I think it'd be worth also being able to state how many people get paid correctly, just to provide it some context. I'm sure there's a lot that are. I think it may have just frozen there.
Nope, I think we got it all.
Oh, okay, you got it. Okay, thanks. Yep. That was my list for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ben, Emily, and then Sarah.
I would like to know when our staff lost the ability to see their files in their pay stubs in Munis, and when we will get that fixed. It's just exacerbating everything that people can't actually get in and see the details and try to understand if they've been paid correctly and what they've been paid and for what. And so as we work to relaunch Munis, I am hoping that we have a fix in the immediate term to enable people to actually see the details of their pay in Munis. So there starts to become more certainty in at least what the numbers are.
Thank you, Emily. Sarah, Brydon, and then Micky.
So to put within the category of sort of nuts and bolts that Ben was talking about in terms of things that I'd like to have a better understanding of, I've seen in several of the emails, Munis and the Employee Access Center. And it just seems like several places where people need to go and enter information or get information. So I'd like to understand how that whole universe works and how things sort of work together, fit together. And then tying back to that with what Emily just said, I'd like to better understand who is doing the work. This is more of a, future looking, but who's doing the work of setting us up so that pay stubs can be easier to understand in the future? And what is that work going to look like? How can we make that document something that's more meaningful for folks? I'm also to sort of get at an issue that I've seen in a few emails that have come in from staff. There have been some people who either actual or perceived have an issue with the amount of benefit deductions they've had taken out of their paychecks. So I'd like more information about whether those things are errors or misunderstandings. But if they're errors, I'd like a better understanding of whether those are part of the Munis ball of problems, or if that's something separate that happens to be, inconveniently occurring at the same time. That's my next chunk of questions.
Awesome. I love it when we have cameos from children and pets. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you, Sarah Brydon, Micky, and then
that was Lydia Grant for everyone who has not met her yet.
Oh, yes. Awesome. Micky, and then I have a couple of questions as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a follow-up. I heard and last time the superintendent explained, just said, and he sent some people from the central office to different buildings. I try to understand what they have done and what's the purpose of them to be there, and what kind of strategy they had to encourage people, to report any issues with the payroll or the paychecks, if something was done on each building, because we still have people who they are still afraid to report anything. So the only people we see who can really navigate the emails, they are sending it about the people being silent. So, sending people each building is fine, but what they are doing, what they have done, actually showing up on the building and they leave, just a physical presence, or something was done a little more deeper, so they can really encourage people to feel like we heard you and we want you to report. And then the second one is that, so I still don't understand why we have done for those years the data entry manually for our hourly employees and the stipends, why the system was not electronically, because I think the data entry was done by one person who was doing those entries for all the stipend and hours, and that person never had any other person for training, like have somebody to train. So if that person leave or go to vacation, we can have somebody to take over. Why all that? Everything was not coordinated the way it's supposed to be. And where were the issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Micky. And just to piggyback on that, your first question, I'd just like to understand how many people the leadership team has been in contact with at the schools. I think that would be helpful. I would love to see a copy of the job descriptions of the positions that we're hiring for in the payroll team. I'd love to make sure that those are consistently posted on our website and understand our recruitment strategy. I'd like to know if any of this work could be done remotely, and could we be recruiting from bigger places? I know that sometimes with payroll, it has to be on location, but I think that could be helpful. And I would like to be able to know on a regular basis how many employees that we know of right now that still have not gotten any pay. Those are the questions that I have right now. And Nylette, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to know how far back have employees been reporting like pay inaccuracies? Because I know I didn't get my stipends for like 2 months. Like I think in September and November. So I want to know if for some people it goes that far as well. And I also want to know with the reworking of Munas, if after, like, on the other side, if they're going to be able to then know what people's pay inaccuracies are, or if people are still going to have to come and report that their paycheck was wrong. So, like, after Munis is fixed, I want to know if they'll be able to, like, know whose paychecks are inaccurate, or if they'll still need folks to, like, email to tell them, to tell them the pay inaccuracies. And then I also want to know, once Munis is fixed, if they'll also have the capacity to include people's paying steps, not necessarily the folks that work, not necessarily the teachers that are salaried, but the people that work hourly, because depending on how long you've been working for the city, there's like pay steps where it's like $50 every year or something like that, or every 6 months or something like that. So I want to know if, like, they'll be able to reinstate people that have, like, gone through specific paying steps throughout this like period, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Thank you, Nylet. Youssef? Hope you're on mute, Youssef. Get you every time.
Thank you. My question has been asked in different ways, but I was wondering if we can have a committee that follow up the impact of long term, whether it's the W-2 tax and staff that who are in income-based housing, who are household for individuals who receive SSI or Social Security or DHHS benefits. And those might impact if, for example, they've been overpaid, those may affect their housing status and financial status. So can we have a committee that will follow up and make sure that once hopefully we resolve the paychecks and weekly and monthly issues, to have that follow-up and consideration of those who are being affected indirectly. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Sarah?
Thank you. My next batch of questions has to do with costs. And so it's not necessarily, we have some of this information already, but just to sort of get my head around, what we're looking at here. Overpayments, if there's still, as far as I know, there's still an open question about what's going to happen with overpayments, whether some or all of them will be recouped. Any overpayments that are not recouped obviously would be a cost. The Tyler Technologies consultant, spin glass, fines, penalties, those sorts of things. I'm looking for more clarity around where those costs are going to, like, where that money is going to come from. I've heard the board contingency fund be talked about a little bit. And I'd like to better understand where that fund sits right now, how it gets replenished. And I want to make sure that we're being cognizant of what we have left for resources in terms of board oversight moving forward. I also would like to get a little bit more information about, so my understanding is that the district has quite a bit of money in reserves. And I'd like, some more discussion about the pros and cons of using some of that to cover some of the costs we're incurring.
Thank you, Sarah. Emily?
I'd like to know about the MOU with PEA that I believe was signed. We heard on Tuesday that there was a tentative agreement. Don't know where those provisions ended up. So I'd like to see that MOU and understand what in particular, I'd like to understand all of the details.
Thank you, Emily. What else? Julianne, I know that you are just joining us here. I'm going to give you some airtime. So just as a reminder, Julianne, this is questions only. We're just collecting, and Aura is taking notes, and this meeting is recorded and will be posted publicly. So
certainly,
take it away.
Well, on one of the questions was a follow-up to a previous question on costs, and there was a mention in the meeting that when I asked about costs, that we had the funds coming from unused salary because we do not have enough people working, so we have money that was budgeted for that. So my question is, where are we on the number of people who are working from the previous budget? I mean, there was a budget for so many FTEs. How many of those FTEs are filled? How many are not filled? And how are those? Are they being planned to be filled? And so, how much is left over, whether it's used for this process or not? Just where do we stand with the number of people who work for the system? That's my one question at this point.
Thank you, Julianne. Sarah, did you have other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I did. I want to learn more about the plans to move to ADP. I want to better understand what the costs would be to do that, and how those costs would compare to continuing to employ payroll staff within central office. I have some concerns about whether outsourcing will fix the challenges we're having. And so I want to have more discussion and learn more about that. I want to make sure that, I want to better understand if we were to move to ADP and there happens to be an issue with an employee's payroll, what do they do? Because then they can't come to somebody in central office and ask a question. So I would want to better understand how that will work. I would be very interested in learning or hearing from some of ADP's other customers about their experience with the service. Have we asked for that? Have we gotten that? If we have gotten other customers' narratives about whether ADP has been a successful service for them, I would want to know if those other customers have the same level of complexity that they're dealing with for their payroll. And related to my ADP questions, I have significant questions about who within the finance department is reviewing the current processes, data entry, how are sub days entered for existing staff, for people who are only substitutes and not ed techs also. How are stipends entered? How are extra hours, covering lunch periods, beyond the bell, those sorts of things. How are those all entered and getting into the system? And I understand that nobody has time to do that right now, but if we don't do that, then the ADP is not going to fix that stuff. So I want to better understand how that's all coming together. And again, compare what that working well in-house would look like compared to an ADP path.
Thank you, Sarah. Micky?
Thank you. I have two questions on them. For the people who are behind today, the paycheck, and they really have a hardship to pay their rent, and they are behind a lot of the payment. What do we do? What the district is doing? I know that I read that the foundation is doing something. What else more than we're doing to support those people? That's what I want to know. Or we just rely on the foundation because they came and they step in, and also if what the foundation is helping to support families or employees, that's going to be refundable, or is something just be helping them, for that time being. Just want to make sure. And for the audit, we need to wait until the end of the the audit to get the result, or can we have some update weekly? At least we know the different steps they've been taking, so we are not just, living in the moon, and we can follow weekly what's going on and until the end, if it's possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Micky. Emily, and then I have a question.
I also would like an update and then subsequently weekly updates on the Drummond Fund that we've set up. How much have we paid out, and what does, and understanding an ongoing update. So we're getting a hold of that.
Yep, that was my question too. Anything else? Laura, I know that you have been diligently capturing all of these questions, and so maybe haven't had a chance to put some thoughts together. So I'm happy to jump in on notes if you could, if you have questions.
I think one I had was just, I think at some point, Javier said something about state audit, but I wondered, whether there was any sign of the state requesting an audit, and whether we were to voluntarily request that, what would that process be to do that? And I think I have to think for a second on another one, but I don't know if anybody else has one while I'm...
Go ahead, Julie.
Would you mind taking that, Sarah, while I just think of my...
Yeah.
Right now, the new budget should be starting and should be moving into various levels. What is the status of that at the department building level? I mean, as far as being at the central office level, they're busy. But what's going on, and what kinds of things are people looking, or are they not doing it? Because that's an added thing to be done on top of the others things.
Thank you, Julie and Sarah.
So in light of Julian's very good question, I wanted to reinforce, I think it's not necessarily a duplicate question, but Sarah, I know that you had said something about, can we get the payroll positions on the website, things like that. I would like more information about to what extent we are using a temp agency, to what extent we are using a recruiter. My understanding is that there are not enough people in seats to do the work that we need to have done. So I'd like more information about what's been done to get more people, and what more we can be doing, so that the team has the resources and energy to do the work that we need them to do.
Great. Julie? No question? Okay, beautiful. Laura, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I know Micky mentioned the foundations fund. I was just wondering, and maybe that's to go back to Andy, but just would love to know what the utilization of that has been so far. And I think Micky already asked the other piece, just are there other processes we have as a district to reach those folks that are, in dire financial situations? And then the other one I wondered about was that my understanding of some of the issue of segregating of roles. I'm trying to think what my question is exactly. I guess I want to know segregation of duties, right? I want to understand if it's still the case that all different finance personnel can access all of the different accounting processes. So my understanding is that's part of the issue, is that those roles are supposed to be segregated. So I'm wondering if there's, and maybe this is part of the audit, I don't know, but just I'm wondering if any change has been made to that piece of that, certain folks should be having access to certain things and not others. So I guess that's a piece of segregation, but just want to understand if we are in any place in that, or is that not, have we not moved forward with any of that? So I think that's it.
Great. Any other questions? Just give us a couple of beats to let our brains finish their little cycles of thinking. Yep, Julianne, go ahead.
Even before Justin's letter, I had read over the audits and some of the other documentation and at various points it says this person was hired, this person wasn't hired. It's a historic kind of situation. What has happened along the line? A sketch, flow chart. The responses were identical for 3 years in a row in the last 3 audits from the school department. I mean, word for word. So that was one piece. Also, I'm wondering about our situation with the federal ESSER funds. What's going is that the last one, I believe, is supposed to go for summer school, or I think I'm trying to, there were 2 of them I was looking at. So what, are we going to have issues with the feds? Would be a question there on those fundings, or if they are so isolated that we don't have to worry about that. A lot of looking through things, there are a lot of grants that run through the budget, and lots of them for lots of health reasons and stuff. And I'm just wondering how that money and that organization is isolated. But I don't know if that was articulate enough, but
yeah, no, you got the gist. You got the main story there.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay,
yeah, we've got
it. Having my second cup of coffee without.
Beautiful. Any other questions? Okay. If you think of other questions, you can reach out to me and I will add them to this list. As I mentioned in my email, I'm going to be working with Javier to get the answers to these questions. We might not get them all at the same time. In fact, we probably will not. And some of these answers will not come until we start to get the findings of the audit back. So know that I am working on getting these answers and will be giving you information as soon as we have it, and also working with Javier on just another update on what he can share. So please reach out with questions, and I will, we have to vote to end the meeting, right? Getting my head around all of these rules. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Julianne, is there a second? Thank you, Sarah Brydon. So all in favor of ending the finance meeting at 7:50? Great. So we are adjourned at 7:50. Thank you all very much.